Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author and illustrator. Today, I'm talking with Martin Stewart and David Habben. Both Michael and David have impressive backlists of books in the world of children's literature. And while we'll mention some of those titles, they're here today to talk about their newest releases, the first two books in their Bridget Vanderpuff series. Bridget Vanderpuff and the Baked Escape, and Bridget Vanderpuff and the Ghost Train. These middle grade novels are filled with mysteries, mischief, and melt-in-your-mouth croissants, too. They are deliciously funny, and they are perfect for the middle grade readers in your life, as well as the inner child your adult self might want to read to. So let's get right to the episode today. Martin, David, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you very much for having us. Lovely to be here.
I'm excited for today's conversation because, as I mentioned before we clicked record, this is a series that I wish you wrote 30-something years ago so that my younger self could have enjoyed this delightful, whimsical, mysterious, fun set of books that you have. So I'm just grateful that my inner child got to read it, and that through this podcast, hopefully a lot of middle grade readers will get their hands on it as well. So let's start with some introductions. I didn't give too much of an introduction about either of you in the opening because I was hoping that both of you could just give a little glimmer of your journey to children's literature here for us today before we jump into talking about your new series. Martin, do you want to jump in and start?
Yep, absolutely. So my name is Martin Stewart. I am a children's author. I also write adult fiction. I had my first book for grown-ups, which came out here in the UK in March last year. But primarily, I'm an author of children's and young adult fiction. And I've been doing that now for 10 years. Prior to that, I was a high school English teacher. And I left teaching in December 2014. So really just Christmas past marks 10 years of me doing this time. And in that time, I've written previously for older kids and for teenagers, maybe more for the kind of ages that I was teaching as a high school teacher. And latterly, while I've been writing, I've had two children of my own. They're now 7 and 5. And it was reading books with them, reading younger fiction. And I wanted to write something for them that really captured the energies. And one of the things that I think so many of us experience is that when you have your own children, you get back in touch with that part of yourself and that part of your life. And I really wanted to write a book that my children could read and could share with their friends and things before they got older. And I was so pleased to hear you saying, Stephanie, that you'd have loved to read these books when you were a kid, because that I really wrote them for myself as a younger reader, and trying to really harness the feeling of what I enjoyed when I was a younger reader. So it's been fantastic doing this. I do a lot of primary school visits and things, talking to younger kids and things now because of the Bridget books, here in the UK. And it's been so much fun. It's been a real change of pace and a real joy.
Yeah. There's just something special about childhood reading, I think, anyway. But when you get a book, a series like this that is just, it's fun, yet also has some deeper themes that kids can grab on to it. It's a series that I think kids will remember kids will remember reading as a really important time. And how cool that your kids get to read it and enjoy it, from
Yeah.
dad.
It's been a nice thing, and that's actually the dedications in the first two books, which are out and coming out in the States. The first one is for Tessie, which that's my wee girl, and my little girl. I'll try not to be too Scottish here. And the second one, the dedication for Bridget and the Ghost Train, is Milo, and that's my son. So that's been something that has, it's just profoundly important. This amazing thing. They don't think it's cool at all. In that way, that
Yeah.
no children are impressed with their parents at all. So they're very blithe about this. And oh, well, thanks, Dad. Can
Yeah.
I have my tablet?
Yeah.
All that stuff. But when they're my age, I hope it will be something of lasting significance. But they talk about Bridget a lot, and Bridget is this character who just exists really. She's so well established in our house and in our world.
Right.
And a big part of that, not to try and kind of segue away from me, is David's work. And what he's done in manifesting Bridget is something that kids are so aware of, and it's something that's a really big part of their world.
Yeah. Well, that was a perfect segue to David. So thank you for that. David, you want to jump in?
I really appreciate that too. Yeah, I love hearing you talk about your motivation with these books, Martin, and it was so fun. We've worked on these now over 2 years,
Yep.
and this is the first time that Martin and I have actually been able to hear each other's voice and see each other's face in this way. So it's fun to have that experience.
Yeah. I've been really, really looking forward to it. It's such a big thing.
Yeah, and by all means, all the Scottish you want, bring it in. I love it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, me too.
yeah, the fun thing about working with a title like this and with a great story like this as an illustrator is you get a chance to kind of enter into a world that wouldn't normally be part of my usual drawing. I don't typically go and draw young girls that are masterfully making creative baking adventures, and so it was really fun to have new characters introduced to me, and then try to figure out a way to bring that to the stories, and a lot of that, speaking of my background, like I was raised by a loving elementary school librarian mother who surrounded me with children's books and children's illustration, and so growing up, seeing all those amazing titles around me, reading and drawing, and now being able to do that as an adult is really fun because I kind of get to connect all those different times of life. And my kids are a little bit older. I've got an 11 and a 9-year-old, and as as they've seen the drawings and heard the stories and read some of the stories, seeing their excitement about it has been just kind of a full circle experience for me. It's been really fun.
Yeah. I do love how connected, and maybe I should wait to talk about this later, but I do love how connected the illustrations are to the text, because in the children's literature world, we have our picture books where we've got, equal maybe picture and text. And as we go up and up and up, those pictures decrease, right? Unless we are reading graphic novels, it is kind of rare to have a good number of illustrations throughout the book. But in this collaboration with the two of you, the images, the text, they're just so important in imagining this wonderful location, this amazing bakery, these characters, their expressions, whether it's Bridget or some of the other less savory characters we'll get to talk about later in the text. It really does make the book come alive in our imaginations.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. That's I think that was part of the goal as we went back and forth, was trying to find that good balance, and huge credit to the book designers as well that were able to find those ways to incorporate the images and lay it out with the text so that you get that sense of the ongoing adventure. It's really great.
Yeah.
Great experience for me.
That was something when I'm talking about my own childhood reading. I'm a very visual person, and I was and still am one of those readers who, halfway through a book, if a new character shows up, I'll go back to the cover and see if I can figure out which character that is. You know, that I love the interaction of it all the way through. And such a big part of imagining being a writer. This is my sort of kind of genesis as a writer is, and this is something that comes up if you Google me, is that I wrote my first book when I was 8 on Post-it notes, which is true. I did do that. And this was because Roald Dahl had died. And it wasn't that I immediately spotted a gap in the market, you know, because he wasn't going to be producing new books that I thought, oh, I can do this. But it was because he was on the news. And, you know, in a pre-Google world, you didn't see writer, you know, he was just a name on a shelf, you know.
Yeah.
And he was on the news, and my mother had said, that's Roald Dahl. And I really remember quite clearly kind of going, like he's just like somebody's grandfather, you know, he's just
Right.
this man.
He's a real person.
And that sort of feet of clay moment, you know, was something that I thought I really want to do. And the Roald Dahl books and the Quentin Blake illustrations and that kind of that relationship between the author and the stories and this manifestation of these characters was just such a dream of mine, you know. And so to get to this stage where I have books that are written for the age, and like you say, Stephanie, you know, they kind of, we age out of having illustrations, and I don't know why, because I love them, you know.
Wow.
But to have these and to have this look, you know, across these 4 books that have this feeling and this identity that David's given them visually is such a dream come true, you know.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned Roald Dahl and Quentin Blake, you know, 2 of my favorites, certainly household names growing up. And I remember looking at Quentin Blake's work and seeing how simple and effortless it looked, and how, as a kid, I remember thinking, how did he get away with just doing that little doodle in a book? Like that's, you know, there's these wonderful characters and bring such life to it. And I go back to him a lot as an artist myself, and with my students when there's moments of like, am I supposed to look like something else? Am I supposed to draw it in this way? And I said, look at some of these great examples like Quentin Blake, who can do so much with such a minimal amount and bring these characters to life. And I definitely have those illustrators in my mind as I'm, you know, approaching a project like this. Like, what can I do to make that character memorable in the same way that we think of the BFG or something else?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Miss Trunchbull was somebody who really loomed over it. Matilda was the
Sure.
I read
Yes.
more than any other. And you can obviously, I mean, I think you can quite clearly see the kind of psychic imprint of Miss Trunchbull.
Yeah.
In Miss Acrid, you know. I mean, it's really it's a very deliberate nod, you know, because that's such a, she just looms large over so much of children's fiction, you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the book. We've kind of mentioned some of the characters that they might get to meet and they might get to see in this book. So could you, 2 things I'm hoping you'll do. Number 1, I'm hoping you'll give readers a bit of an overview of the series before we jump into talking about book by book, a bit of an overview. And I know that it came from your desire to write for children at this younger age, but I'd love to get the backstory of why Bridget, why the hair, why the bakery? Is there, I'd love to know how you ended up there from that desire to write for this age group.
Yeah. Do you know, it's one of the things, I think names are very important. She was always called Bridget Vanderpuff, and I'm not really sure why. Sometimes the name changes quite late. I have a big list of names on the notes on my phone, and sometimes I'll really have to work to kind of find the right name. But she was always just Bridget Vanderpuff. And the reason it's a bakery is because the very kind of inception of being a parent coincided with the Great British Bake Off, as we would call it. I think it's the Great British Baking Show in America, isn't it? So it's that. Yeah. And over here, when my daughter was born, the first 7 series, I think, which I had never watched, were all on Netflix. And my daughter was born premature. So she was tiny. She was £4.15. And so we had to bottle feed her. And what that meant was that we both did it. My wife and I both did it. And we would both be up through the night. And we binge watched the whole of the Great British Baking Show. And it was so perfect for that kind of period because you would be up at, it's like, you're up at 2 a.m, standing in your own kitchen kind of thing. And we would just put on the Bake Off. And it was ideal because you could fall asleep and wake up 2 hours later and it didn't matter. It wasn't like you were watching, Breaking Bad or something.
Right.
You would just wake up and go, oh, it's bread week, that's fine. And it was this gentle, warm show, and we were there with our new family, and it all just, I think, sort of rearranged my DNA. And when I was saying before about that thing that it brings you back to your own childhood, I realized that such a core memory of mine, I think, to go a bit inside out with this, that a core memory that I think lots of us have is baking as a family, even people who don't bake a lot. And that was, my mother didn't bake particularly often or very well necessarily. I've got really clear memories of, standing on a chair in the kitchen and licking the spoon and all that kind of stuff. And it's that, and when I think of my grandmother's house, I think of the Eve's puddings, like an apple sponge thing that she would make. And I thought that the best way I knew to tell a story about love and found family, which is what Bridget experiences, was baking and cakes. And that just as a kind of fun shorthand for the ways in which we can show each other affection. And there's a kind of limitlessness to it because there are so many different types of cake, that it's so much opportunity to do lots and lots of different things. And the thing with Bridget, just to kind of give a kind of précis of the story, is that Bridget lives in the orphanage for errant childs with Miss Ackred. Miss Ackred is the most unpleasant woman in fiction, I think. Unspeakably cruel. And Bridget always gets the better of her because Bridget is brilliant at everything she's ever done. She can jump off the buildings, she invents things, she solves crimes, she rescues all the other childs. She's this very, very capable person. And once she escapes the orphanage and goes to live with Mr. Vanderpuff in his bakery, she discovers that the only thing that she cannot do is bake, which is obviously a very bad time to find this out. And so when Mr. Vanderpuff tries to teach her how to whip cream, she does it so badly that the cream starts screaming and jumps out the bowl and runs across the kitchen. And she tries to make cupcakes, and the icing is so sticky that they stick to the ceiling and can't possibly be moved. But what happens is that it turns out she really is in the right place. And when Miss Ackred comes back to kidnap Mr. Vanderpuff and hold him to ransom, Bridget realizes that what she's baked actually is everything that she needs. So she paints chocolate on her cheeks, like a confectionery commando, and gets tooled up with scream cream and suction cupcakes and razor buns and so on, and goes off to rescue Mr. Vanderpuff. And the shape of that first story had quite a classic feel of, the orphanage, the found family, and building towards that big rescue and this big moment where, she really finds her place. And after that, we go back into what we find out in the first book she has done in the past, is be involved in detecting and solving crimes. And then she finds that her new village, which is called Bell-on-Sea, is where Mr. Vanderpuff's shop is about to be invaded by a ghost train. And so she sets out on a kind of Sherlock Holmes quest to find out what's really going on in the village. And she becomes a detective then. And I don't want to say too much. I was about to say something else that actually is quite spoilery. I'll try not to do that.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you didn't, because we don't give spoilers, or at least we try not to. But
yeah.
I think you had everybody at confectionery commandos. Everybody wants to read the book with that phrase right there. And I think with everything you said, that's why I just fell so in love with it. Because for me, childhood, growing up, baking was love as well.
Yeah.
Baking was family. We may not have done it as often as other families, but when we did it well, right? And we really enjoyed it. And so I feel like that feeling, even though it starts out with Bridget not in a very comfortable, nice place, you just literally feel that warmth of the story, just like Bridget feels that emotion when she tastes the wonderful confections that are in the bakery. It's that energy and that emotion that she feels in the story. I feel like readers feel on the outside. It just kind of wraps you up and just takes you into it. And now I'm remembering how fun that scene was where she had the chocolate on her face as she goes and does the rescue, and the things that she initially, is feeling upset about and trying so desperately to fit into this new life end up being the very things that save her and her newfound family.
Yeah, the Confectioner Commandos is one of my favorite illustrations that David's done, where Bridget she's running and she's got the chocolate on her cheeks, and it's that he's so captured the determination that she has. I've got that one. That's in my presentation when I go and talk to kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just wonderful. How did you, David, decide, which things to bring to life, which elements to include in the book and just to imagine. At first I thought, I don't know if I would have been able to conceptualize what, Screaming Cream might have looked like or a number of the other wonderful things that she makes. Tell us a little bit about that
Yeah.
process.
It's an interesting collaboration when I'm working with authors and publishers, because typically as an illustrator, I'm going to be given a very specific set of characters or scenes that they want. So there was a lot of decision making that goes on even before they talk to me. But that being said, I was very happy to see the list that I was given of the different scenes to pull out. And so it's fun to, you got all the experience of everybody involved coming in and saying, this is for sure what we want to show. Or I'm sure Martin was pointing out things he wanted to see as well. At least I assume, Martin. I hope you had some say in that.
Yeah, do you know what I'm trying to remember? I think certainly in the first book, I think there are such clear big beats because
Yeah.
because she tries these different recipes
Yeah.
that actually I think I was presented with the same list as you and thought,
Oh, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that's such a kind of natural fit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really kind of funny. When the way that all works. I teach illustration, like I was saying before, and a lot of my students don't realize how collaborative a book project really is. It's, Martin and I are fortunate enough to have our names on that cover, but there's a whole team behind it that really gets together to make things work. So we kind of collaborate on that. But one of the things that we do at the beginning of that, especially with the first book, is you have to decide on the look of these different characters, because you're going to have them, for a while. And so we went back and forth, and it's funny to hear, Martin, it's funny to hear you talk about Miss Ackwood, because she really is this awful person. And my my original sketches made her look much more awful than what ended up in the book. I really kind of dove into her being a really kind of disgusting figure. Um, and they kind of came back, so can you rein that in a little bit, like for our audience? We got to be a little bit more careful. So I mean, she's just such this amazing character. The idea that she has a badger for a belt is just the greatest. I just love that so much. And those kind of moments as an illustrator, I look at that description like, oh man, that's almost like I wish I would have had that idea first and loved to just have this character with animals like just strung around him. And so we get to play around with that. And then of course, like Martin was saying, with the scenes we get to go through, and there are these bigger dramatic moments or specific important parts of the plot that we can work with to really help the viewers kind of connect more. And I think when the text of the book is really kind of ramping up to a certain point or getting to a more poignant point, having that extra picture there um, kind of brings in a lot of different readers. Because if you're sitting with your kids and maybe they're young enough that you're reading this to them, then they see that picture and they get more of a sense of the importance of it because there's a picture for that. It's like the beginning of chapters in books usually have pictures because it's something that they want you to pay attention to. And then as you age up with it, or you're reading it on your own, it does allow for more of that kind of pause almost in the reading, that you're getting to that point, and then you've got almost like it's like a screenshot from a movie where you're saying, oh, that's, that's what I can envision in my mind. And some people are really good about like reading a text and having it all come to pictures in their mind, and other people, it's the other way around. And so I feel like this mix of that in the book allows us to approach people from different ways and help them connect with it. And so yeah. And then when it comes to just illustrating it, we just try to make it as dynamic as we can and really show that energy that Bridget has and her inventiveness. And um, some of the you mentioned like the bakery and some of the scenes that come up. I don't want to give any spoilers for other ones, but there's ones that were really fun to get into the details with. And I'm a details kind of illustrator, so anytime somebody says, "Can you add more detail here?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm ahead of you. Let's go. Let's." You have to slow me down when it comes to details. So it's fun to have that opportunity with these.
Yeah,
There
when
was
you said dynamic there, that was the word I was thinking. That's just when you said, because they are so dynamic. And I think, I mean, Stephanie, you asked about how to draw Screaming Cream. And that's one of two particular examples, because David he's brought to life these things that I can just imagine. But actually, like I say, I'm a very visual person. I haven't always I didn't have a picture of what the Scream Cream would look like. And then David drew it, and it was like, oh, like of course that's what it looked like. It's this perfect thing.
Yeah.
And the other one that I think could be very sort of gently spoilery is in book 4, where there is a character who I describe as somehow having twin monobrows. And I remember I said to my wife, I have no idea how David is going to draw somebody who somehow has one big eyebrow that is also in some way doubled. And he did it. And it's perfect. It's just so great, you know.
Well, it certainly helps to have good descriptions in the stories, right? It's there's always this kind of like space between what the text says and what the picture is going to be. And Martin so vividly described these characters that for a visual person like myself, as he's as I'm reading it or as it's being described, it's like, oh, I can see this already happening, this person forming in front of me. And so it's super fun to have that kind of inventiveness on the writing side, and then I get to play with it on the visual side.
Well, that and the back and forth that we had about a couple of points of calibration, so that there's somebody in the second book whose name is Paisley Pattern. She is the junior assistant librarian in Bell-on-Sea Public Library. And David had done a really great drawing, kind of sketch, like an initial sketch, like how's this for Paisley? And it was great, but she was just a tiny bit too tall. And the librarians, I had decided by this point that all librarians, and if your mother was a librarian, David, I'm sure you'll sort of get into this. They're the best people, and they're this is externalized by they all wear beautiful fluffy jumpers. And so she needed her fluffy jumper, and so I sent back a kind of garbled email of almost a kind of stream of consciousness of nonsensical, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. And he sent back like, okay, so more like this. And it was just perfect. So that's an example that I show in schools, is here was the first sketch. And then we talked about this and look what he did,
Yeah.
It's a huge gift and blessing in my life to have that connection with libraries and librarians, and certainly it helps me as an illustrator to appreciate and learn more of those things. And I love hearing you tell Martin about like the way your family gets involved in all of your stories, even subconsciously. It's just kind of in the air and comes into your work, and the same thing happens with me. And my mother was, like I said, a librarian for over 25 years. And now my sister is also has become a librarian as well. We just have this love of books and art, and I've tried to incorporate that somewhat into the illustrations too. And Martin, we've never really talked about this, so here's your reveal for your podcast. But one of the things that was really fun for me when I was thinking about these characters is that I often find, especially when I'm not the one that's coming up with the original concept for the character, I find ways that maybe there's going to be a reference to something familiar to me. And so we have a few redheads in my family, and and my sister being one of them. And now she's of course, a librarian. And so as I was reading through the stories of Bridget and coming up with these illustrations, there's so much overlap that it was very easy for me to be thinking like, oh, what did my sister look like at this age? And not the same amount of hair, but certainly that, that red hair, and very much in the same vein with what you said earlier, that she likes to help people, she likes to solve problems, she likes to get in there and get things done. And so as I was reading these stories and drawing those characters, it was very much like translating some of my own family experiences into that and making those connections. And it's fun to be able to hear that from you, Martin, as well, that we're both bringing in some real personal touches to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. The reason that Bridget has red hair, she always had big hair, but the reason she has red hair is that when I was writing this book, the first book, during lockdown, and one of the things that we did during lockdown, I'm not sure how it was in the States. Here, there was a period of time during one of the lockdowns where you were allowed out for 1 hour's exercise per day. Did you guys have that?
Mm-hmm.
It was 1 hour you were allowed, and we took our hour up in the woods near where we live. I live in the west coast of Scotland, so we had the beach and we've got the forest. But we went to the forest every day because my wee girl does this thing where she watches something intensely and very exclusively. Disney movie, she'll watch. At this point, it was Brave every day for 2 weeks, and then she'll move on and watch something else. So this was Merida's hair. We did that thing where she had to be Merida, and my wife and I were Merida's parents. So I was doing my best Billy Connolly voice and things, which I have that in my locker. I have to say, I'm not going to do it just now,
I was going to say, I kind of want to hear that.
I mean, this is pretty much it. We're both from Glasgow, and that's why Pascal is called Pascal, because after Brave, she moved on to Tangle, and that's Rapunzel's Chameleon. So I was actually doing a wee bit of character design with her, and I was talking about who I was writing and what should he look like, and should he be very small or should he be very round? And she thought he should be very round because he lives in a bakery, and so that's why Pascal looks that way. And that was super fun getting to do that kind of thing.
That's so funny. I don't. Again, we're doing soft spoilers, but Pascal is so fun, and of all of the descriptions of the characters, his is probably the one that made me laugh out loud when I read it, because the other ones we're reading through and it's like, oh, this is interesting, this is cool, this is whatever, and then you get to Pascal and the description said, imagine a head of cabbage with arms and legs. It's like, this is great. And so to draw this little round body and imagine this little spherical kind of cabbage guy, he's still one of my favorite characters to draw from the book, because it's so fun. And
he's always my favorite. When kids ask, Bridget is my favorite character, but that's kind of a boring answer for kids because she's the main character, so it sounds as though you're trying to sell them books if you say that. So my other answer is Pascal. I was kind of channeling. I think when I'm writing dialogue, I hear it in my head a little bit, not to sound too nutty, but when it's working well, it's kind of like taking dictation a little bit. And Pascal spoke with the voice of Nathan Lane.
Oh, sure.
As a kind of Timon voice, and that sort of, and a little bit like he's in Modern Family. He's Pepper Saltzman in Modern Family.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of dialed up sort of thing. So that's Pascal feels that he loves the bakery so keenly that if somebody says something mean about a donut, he just faints. He just loses consciousness.
Yeah.
And that always makes me laugh so much that he just dead out. Because he just can't. It's so rude, to say this about a pastry. Oh, yeah. He was great.
Well, I'll tell you the challenge, of course, is that Martin and I are almost on the other side of the planet, and so here in the States, I'm going to be doing some book events, and I wish we could be there together at the same time. But you've had a chance to do some over in Europe, and I'm going to do some here, and but when I do them, I do a little bit of a drawing like lesson with the kids that are there, And so we've got a couple coming up where I'm going to show them how to draw, and Pascal's the one that we're going to go with because they can start with the circle and then and add little arms and legs. So I'll be sure to send those on and share them. But it's really fun to have kind of you've got your main character that everybody's following, and then these little side partners and characters that stay with her, and Pascal has a little bit of like a conscience, like Jiminy Cricket kind of thing going sometimes, and I've been able to use these books with my kids and others to be able to say, like, look at how this main character is going through these experiences, but they're not going alone, and there's people going with them and guiding them and helping them, and they're helping other people, and they're building this community through the storyline, uh, even a small community, but a community, a team nonetheless, and how important that is, and to do it with a humorous way where you've got a little guy that's like super helpful and also very sensitive and emotional to the point of fainting over a donut. So
No, I'm actually just, Stephanie, we're talking about both books. We're talking about Baked Escape and Ghost Train. Is that yes?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, one thing that just when David's talking about the that was really important and that was quite a fundamental decision that I made early on was that there would never be Bridget's new life would never be in jeopardy. That the stories that once she moves in with Mr. Vanderpuff, it's not that he never thinks for a second that this might not be the right place or that she has to prove herself to stay. He loves her unconditionally, and that's something that that was really fundamental. That it's not that she's in any precarious situation, or each book that goes by, she has to, if she can't make a cake by the end of the book, who knows what's going to happen. She is totally secure and totally loved. And that community that David's talking about expands throughout the series. There's a character in book 3 called Clementine Ladouce, who is based on a TV chef in the UK who I absolutely love, called Andy Oliver. And so this is, I mean, I know that's book 3, but that's slightly spoilery. And it's something that Mr. Vanderpuff says to Bridget, that Clementine, who is Mr. Vanderpuff's friend, she loves Bridget straight away, and Bridget doesn't understand this because she's never met me. And he says, but you're my daughter. There's already a space in her heart waiting for you. And that was something that I experienced as a kid, that my parents, I had quite a big network of support. My parents had lots of friends. We're not that big a family, but my parents have lots of friends that I would call auntie and uncle. And, that sense of community was something I really wanted Bridget to find here. And that then all these side characters coming in that all support her and help lift her up was something that I thought kids would really enjoy as well.
Yeah. So I have to ask now, because for us over here in January, we only have the first 2 books to read, which we're talking about today. How many more do I get to read?
There's 2 more.
Okay, you've just made my day. All right.
Yeah. So
you can
sorry, David.
I was gonna say, you can kind of see little spoilers behind you there on the shelf.
Yes,
Yes.
I did, and I thought, okay, I've got to ask about those before we go. Listeners, you can't see, but I can, and I'm quite happy.
There's more to come. That's right.
There we
So
go.
David,
Okay, great airship robbery,
and the last one, which was September in the UK, is
Monster
Monster Mountain.
Mystery.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the way.
That makes me very happy because, like I said, it's a series I wish I had, and I didn't really want to let it go, even as an adult, because you just get swept away in the fun and the family and the love. Things better when they're shared. All of those beautiful messages are just wrapped into the fun. Before you go, though, I do want to mention the format of the book, because as a reader, I loved all of the different ways the formatting supported my reading experience. So the books are divided into parts. You do have that illustration that leads into the parts, which I loved. But then each chapter has a little icon of some sorts, which kind of foreshadows a bit. And then most of the chapter titles underneath have this little foreshadowing in what I love, which is a rule of three. You got like three little things. And I love that. I have an obsession with just things in threes anyway. I don't know why, but I do. So I loved seeing the three. I love seeing the foreshadowing. But I've got to say, I think my favorite format were those footnotes at the bottom. And so I would love for you to just tell listeners a little bit about that formatting because I think it just adds so much to the book and the story.
Yeah, I mean that's the. I'm glad you like those. The chapter, the little chapter subtitles
Hmm.
was something I had always wanted to do. Um, because there's a sort of Victorian feel to that. There's something that, you know, like Dickens would have done this. You get those little preambles
Yeah.
before the chapters. And that was something that I thought I find them fun anyway. And as a reader, I find that those kind of whet my appetite a little bit because you find out what's going to happen here. Some of these throughout the series, they get quite punny and quite jokey. And I wish I'd prepped one because there's some of them that I'm really so pleased with. I've got these strange little kind of jokes and in-series jokes and pop culture references and things in them. But that was something that I really enjoyed because it's part of how I like to read. And like I say, I thought it might give quite a kind of classic feel to it. That one of the puns, for example, this is in fact, you know, I was going to give you one from book 4, and I've just realised it's a spoiler, so I'm not going to do that.
Oh, okay.
I really caught myself there. Just
Careful.
I know, dear me. The footnotes were something I have always wanted to put in my books because I read so much Terry Pratchett when I was younger, and the Discworld books always had footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
And this, in a way, this is me coming kind of full circle because prior to being published, I was essentially a kind of Terry Pratchett covers band and was trying to do my own version of his work. You know, I think it's something. I'm quite a bad mimic. I struggle to read fiction when I'm writing because I find that I pick up habits, or I'll read something and think, "Oh, this is great," and I sort of find myself being pulled a little bit in that direction. And you know, I'm easily influenced. But part of finding your own style is allowing all those influences to kind of settle, and it comes out as something that's yours. You know, and that took a really long time.
Yeah.
But the Terry Pratchett thing was something I always wanted to do, that kind of thing, and to just bring in those little asides that can be sometimes, you know, gently necessary information. It can't be totally essential information because some readers might skip them or not see them. So that has to be kind of balanced. And other just wee additional jokes that give you a bit of background on the kind of silly things that Bridget's done. And you can actually, I feel, because they're slightly extra textual, you can put in even, I mean, there's lots of silliness in the books, but you can have even more silliness sometimes in the footnotes because they're just a little bit in the margins, you know. So yeah, I love doing those. I mean, they were super fun and really quite important to me to be able to do this. It was a kind of long held ambition, to be able to use those.
It definitely was a favorite part of the book for me. And I've got to say, if we're thinking about book 1, Bridget Vanderpuff and the Baked Escape, page 26, you talk about something that I want someone to magically make for me, which is the bracelet of tiny books.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I want one of those. I have thought, you know, I've attempted to make my own charm bracelets out of books because if you go onto Etsy, you can find anyone who can create these teeny tiny little book covers and people do all sorts of fun creative things with them. And I thought, how fun to just have a bracelet of your favorites to remind you the impacts that books have had. And then here you go and invent something even better, which is teeny tiny in the little magnifying glass. And I just want one. I just want one.
It's a good, and you know that kind of feeling is that's something I really remember from being a kid, that it was something that I wanted from Bridget's inventions. I think probably particularly you want to eat the cakes that she's eating.
You do.
But then she has all these amazing inventions. And that was something I really experienced as a child when I was reading, that the kids in the story would have something like that, or the paraskirt that she can jump off the roof and just float down. I was like, oh man, I would love that, you know. And so that's definitely something that I wanted to be. That's a feeling that I wanted people to have. So I'm really glad that you did. Thank you very much.
Oh, I did. I love it. And I'm going to keep that dream alive somehow. That something like that could come my way. But what we do also put in the back to really help make at least some of those confections come alive is you do have recipes. You have some
Yeah.
extra things from the authors in the back. So I cannot cook at all, but I can bake. And so I do plan to try at least the Choco Chippo coconut recipe
Yep.
that's
Yep.
in the back. So I always love when there are ways that the book can literally come alive, and these recipes, even though I won't be able to have, exploding jelly or suction cup cupcakes, I can
Well,
have something close.
you never know.
That's
something
true.
Don't sell yourself short.
terribly wrong. You know.
That is very true.
Yeah, the recipes has been a really fun one, and I think probably is a good example of how small Scotland is. There's only 5 million people here, and almost everybody lives in a little bit in the middle, down sort of near the bottom in the middle between Glasgow and Edinburgh. I'm from Glasgow, and I mean Glasgow and Edinburgh are the two biggest cities. They're only like 40 minutes apart. You know, I mean, it's a small place. So if basically if you're at Glasgow and you go west until you get your feet wet in the sea, that's where I live. It's like 30 minutes there. But the recipes come from our national chef. Scotland's national chef is a guy called Gary McLean, and he won Professional Master Chef on the BBC in 2016. I'm not sure if there's a US equivalent, because it's like, is Top Chef, is that Master Chef in the UK?
It's
Kind of.
probably similar, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean I know of Top Chef because Liz Lemon watches it in 30 Rock. That's my exposure to Top Chef. This is like he won Master Chef the Professionals, which is where people from the industry go on, and there's a special series for people who are already professional chefs, and he won it. And he is a teacher. He's a lecturer in Glasgow, so he works in a cooking school. So my wife and I, my wife was a teacher as well. We're both Scottish teachers watching this Scottish teacher beat these people who work in Michelin star restaurants. We're both crying because this guy won MasterChef. And he is friends with my friend Jim, who I go running with in the mornings. So when I had said, because the publisher had said, oh, hey, could you give us a recipe? And I was like, no. I mean, no more than I could fly to the moon. I mean, I can't do that. And I was telling Jim this, and he said, "Oh, hey, would you like me to ask Gary?" And I thought, well, that would be quite nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. So he gave me these 4 recipes, and in exchange, I've named 2 characters in the 3rd book after 2 of his kids.
Oh, that's exciting. Oh, now that was a little Easter egg
That's
that
cool.
you just dropped. Now I
A
really
little
can't
Easter
wait.
egg.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So there are lots of baddies in the books, and the boys are, I'm not going to tell you, because I'm trying not to be spoilery.
Yes, no.
Boys, 2 of the baddies in the series are named after the chef's sons. And I went into the school and talked about it and got them up to, because by this point, David had drawn them. So I got to put up on the big projector in the assembly hall, the whole school was there. And I showed the boys their fictional counterparts, because David had done the character sketches by this point. So it's great. I mean, what a nice experience, such a fun thing to do.
Cool. Very cool.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, good luck, and good luck with the choco chip nuts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My big tip for those, because when I made them, I did it badly. I kept looking at them, and they still seemed so soft. So I just left them in. But you're supposed to take them out when they're soft.
Okay.
And then they get kind of chewy.
Okay.
So there you go.
That is a good tip.
Secret.
Yeah.
Please learn from my mistake, because that's what I did not do.
I will. And depending on how they turn out, maybe I'll snap a picture and make sure that finds its way to both of you so that you can see your creation.
That would be amazing. I would love that.
Absolutely.
Oh, I feel like we could just keep talking for a really long time, but I'm afraid we're going to keep dropping some more spoilers that perhaps might ruin the surprise for listeners. So I would love, though, before we wrap up, for both of you to share where listeners and future readers can find you online so they can keep up with you, figure out when we get that next installment of the series, which I can't wait for. What's the best place to find both of you online?
I have a website, which is www.bridgetvanderpuff.com. Where there's a bit more information about the series, about the characters, a little bit of information about me, and there's a contact page there where you can send me a message. I'm on Instagram. I used to have Twitter a wee while ago, but I got rid of it. So I'm only on Instagram, and I am Martin_J_Stewart on Twitter. And so you can find me there. I mean, people in the UK, I go into schools and things, which would be really nice. Something I would love to do would be to do things like this in the States. So if anybody was interested in me talking to, your elementary school group and things, I would love to do that. And please, send me a message on the website, because that would be great fun.
Yeah, it would. It would be so much fun. I wish I could be there too. David, how about you? Where can we find you online?
I'm easy to find if you just look up davidhabben.com. That's Habben. On other areas, I'm Habben Inc. That's Habbenink. And you can find me sometimes on Instagram. I don't do a lot of the social media as much anymore, but I keep my website really updated, and that's a great place to find new sketchbook work, which I love to share, and new projects that are coming out. Some fun things coming up this year that I'm excited about as well. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some more Vanderpuff promotion. So we'll be sharing that on my Instagram. We've got, I'm actually going to be on a local TV station next week doing a little bit of a drawing demo and talking about the books. And we're going to try to do some other nights where people can come and draw as well. I formed a group called Sketchbook Destroyers, and we do some workshops with that. We'll be doing with some college students soon. So really just keep an eye on those two sources for me, and you'll find some fun things coming up soon.
Oh, I wish we all could be in person, and then we could sketch and bake and imagine
I
and
love that.
do all sorts of fun things with all of our
For sure.
around. And
I know I would love it. Something I'd said to David before, actually. As you can, I mean, listeners will not be able to see, but I currently have a beard. I grew my beard back, and I grew my hair back, because previously when I was in schools, I would put a picture of David up on the screen and say, and now we're going to talk about the illustrator. And these kids would say, "Oh, so you illustrated the books?" And I would say, "That's not me." I would say, "It's a bald guy with glasses."
Yeah.
It's not so. So I've grown back as much hair as I can.
No, it's good. It's good. I don't even have that much to grow back, so I'm glad you can do it. I think that's great. I'll do really fun.
Okay.
There you go.
Think of this as our hair. Okay.
You know what? You mentioned this too, and I would really love to do joint visits with schools and come with Martin, and we can do this kind of thing and do some drawing and writing and all this stuff. That's one of the biggest joys for me as an artist, and that's one of the reasons I teach, is being able to help other people also become more actively engaged with drawing. And I just think that's such a valuable part of life, is creating and making in whatever way you can. And so anybody that wants us to come out, we'll show you how similar we look, and we'll do some activities with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, thanks very much, Stephanie, for getting us both together to talk, because it's just what's been quite a strange experience is to have something like this that is such a significant thing to happen, to have this series of books that brings so much of how I feel about my childhood and my family and my own family with my kids and all these things, and to manifest so much of what I think is important about storytelling and why love is the the beating heart of any story that really works. These are all things that are really important to me. And I've done this with David. It's been this collaborative process, and we've gone back and forth with it. And he has made these things and I'm going to show you this. You can't see the back of my laptop screen where I have a Bridget sticker. And so I take her everywhere with me. But this is my phone case.
Oh,
So I'm always, I have a huge cardboard cutout of Bridget that I had made, And so David's done this really profound thing for me that is just one of the most important things that's happened in my life. And as he was saying at the start, we've never actually directly spoken like this, which I don't know. I don't quite know why we've not managed it, but it's been so great to do it. And thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
oh, you're so welcome. I'm honored that the two of you got to come together live for the first time here on the podcast. It feels like you have been working together and chatting together forever. This was fun and light and conversational, and I do have some very engaged listeners who are educators and librarians, and they could make something like that happen. Hopefully listeners reach out. Let's figure out how to bring you two together live. I can't imagine anything more fun than talking about books, laughing, thinking about those wonderful, delicious creations, drawing. Oh, it would be wonderful. So I hope you two do that.
I should say I haven't been to the States since 2016, but I'm coming to California this summer with my family. So if anybody who listens would want, because we're having a family holiday, and I'm a big Steinbeck guy. My son's middle name is Steinbeck, which he might never thank me for. I think possibly, but we're going up to Cannery Row and up to Salinas and going to the Steinbeck Center and all these things. So I will be around in California, and if anybody who has a bookstore around there who might want me to pop in and speak in my clearest, least Scottish accent, I would love to do it. So please, drop me a message on the website.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun. And I'm not far up in Utah, so I'm happy to come and meet you there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that'd be great. And Martin, just again, thank you for bringing me on your journey, and it's been such a privilege to make these books with you. And Stephanie, thank you for giving us the time to share them with more people.
Oh, you are most welcome. I will put all of the links, the websites, the social media handles shared into the show notes to make it easy for people to find you. I will put the links to the first two books, and I will eagerly be waiting for the others to arrive in the States so that I can read them. Thank you both so much for such a wonderful conversation. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.